Tonight we're only going to talk about Mars, which probably doesn't surprise many of you, but we'll do the usual updates on the two active rovers to start with. So today is day 5,102 since landing for Opportunity. That was back in January of 2003. So we're well past our 90-day expected mission. So just to refresh your memory, or for the new folks in the crowd, the location of Opportunity is an area of Mars called Meridiani, and they went there to look for evidence of water and water-related minerals, in particular hematite, an iron sulfate mineral. And so Opportunity landed in a small crater up here, and then over about the last 10 years or so, it has driven its way to the edge of this 20-kilometer diameter impact crater called Endeavour. And for about the last 3 or a little bit more than 3 years, it's been driving along the rim of Endeavour. And what they're looking for in this area is evidence of clay minerals, so rocks that have been in contact with liquid water and have been altered into clays. So this is a close-up of where Opportunity has been driving around. So this is the rim of the crater, and for about the last year now, they've been slowly going down into this valley that's cutting down into Endeavour Crater. So the bottom of the crater is way over here, and this is the fairly steep slope. I think the next slide has a sort of a 3D view. Here's this valley digging into the slope, and they're slowly making their way down into the interior of the crater. But the thinking is that Marathon Valley was caused by a flow of water downslope that eroded into the rim of the crater. And so what they've been looking at for the last month or so is this area of, they're called tabular rocks, and this certainly has the morphology that the geologists expect would be clay, a lot of clay in those rocks. And so they've decided, even though they're on a relatively steep slope, that they're working to try and get their spectrometer instruments, the alpha particle X-ray spectrometer, which has a radioactive source in it. You put it down on the surface, and that gives you the sort of the elemental abundance of the composition of the rocks. And so they got close to this particular rock, and we're all ready to sample it. This is the robot arm, the turntable on the end, ready to put the APXS down. And we're going to zoom in here, but this is the front right and left wheel. And right here, there's a rock poking out from under the wheel. And here's a closer view. And so the rover drivers get very nervous when they're on steep slopes in particular. And if you're doing things that may cause the rover to suddenly shift. And the thinking was, by being perched on a rock, or they thought they were perched on a rock, that might be an unstable situation. So they decided to try an experiment and spin just this wheel while all the other wheels were locked in place, and see if they could get rid of that rock. So, sort of spit it out from under the wheel. And lo and behold, there it is. I'm going to zoom back and forth a couple times, but they succeeded in getting rid of that rock. They wiggled the wheel back and forth a little bit. They're confident that they're on the surface, not perched on any other rocks. And so that gave them confidence that they could go ahead and start doing the measurements. And so this is, I'm sorry, I've already forgotten what day we were at, 5,100 and something. So this is about 2 weeks ago now when they finally started doing the APXS measurement on that rock. The other thing that they worry about is how much solar energy they're getting out of the solar panels. And this is a very dusty time of the Martian year. It's winter in the northern hemisphere, so the sun is to the south of them. They're sort of perched on a south-facing slope to try and point the solar panels more toward the sun. And just recently, there apparently have been some dust devils that went over the Rover and pretty much cleaned off the solar panels. So right now they're getting about 80% of the power that they'd have if the panels were completely clear. And in fact, they're in a state that euphemistically is called solar groovy, which means that they can, during the daytime, they can run completely off the solar panels. They don't have to rely on battery power at all, which helps a lot because they worry a lot about discharging and then recharging the batteries because you can only do that so many times. And so everything is great for opportunity. These are just a couple of the most recent images sent back. So this is looking back sort of upslope. These are all tire tracks where they've been driving back and forth examining various targets in this valley. And this is looking back up toward the crater rim. So this is the rim of the crater above them, and they're sort of moving down in this direction toward the interior of the crater. Okay, so just to recap opportunity, again, it's day 5,102 since landing. They've driven about a little over 45 kilometers and returned a little bit over 228,000 images so far. So everything is moving forward. The sun is moving back toward the north, and so it's getting higher in the sky, and within another about 2 months, the restriction to be on this south-facing slope will be removed because the sun will be pretty much straight overhead for their location. So we'll have about another 9 months or so once they start really pedal to the metal, and they'll be moving down farther and farther into the interior of the crater.